Welcome into the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com, live at Edleys Barbecue at 1004 Woodland Street at 5 Points in East Nashville. Just had a life-changing experience, which is why we are a little late, because I just ate this plate, which Leon has been pushing on me for the weeks that I've been broadcasting here. This is fried ribs with dried rub. That's a 3-bean salad over there and some French fries. I didn't spend much time on the French fries. It was not JT's fault. It's my fault, because I couldn't stop eating this. And Leon stood over me and knew the exact reaction I'd have as I started eating that. And everybody has the same reaction. It's unbelievably good. You have to come to Edleys at 5 Points at Sylvan Park and Donaldson and Franklin at Barry's Farms and Franklin at the factory in Nolansville at 12 South of Gallatin and eat these very ribs. You can pre-order a Thanksgiving meal at edleysbbq.com. You'll see that address stripped across the broad. Unbelievable. We take that down. We talk to you also about ZENSPORTS. Longtime sponsor of this podcast, the place to bet on everything that's coming up. We'll give you some picks there a little while later. We're going to talk about giving quarterbacks time, the timetable that everybody wants for quarterbacks, young quarterbacks coming into the league. That's unrealistic in most instances. We're going to talk about Calvin Ridley and what changed for him last week, how they maybe sustain it. I'm going to talk about, my notes. Look, they are barbecue sauce stained. Can you see them? Barbecue sauce stained notes. Tanking, Mike Herndon's 4 things that need to happen the rest of the season. The punt coverage and how Colt Anderson answered for that today. Just an incredibly bad mishmash as he tried to answer. A little bit of a silver lining with what's going on with the offense in the first half the last couple weeks. Maybe we'll get to a little Jeffrey Simmons. And we've got some good caller questions on the potential to force a quarterback in the draft and the number of bad teams in the NFL and who's got the best chance to do better most quickly. So let's get on with it. A great menu for this podcast, like there's a great menu here at Edleys. Stack up those questions and we'll get to those as well. I'm really happy you're here. Thanks for coming. Retweet if you're on Twitter, point people to the YouTube feed. If you're listening later on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart, subscribe, like, rate, review in all of these places. It all helps the cause. So here we go. Look, people like the fact that Will Levis has sat the last couple, avoided the things he would have faced from very tough situations in Buffalo and in Detroit, and that's fine. But people also really seem to like the idea of a young quarterback getting a lot of time to sit and watch and learn. And certainly that's a favorable situation for quarterbacks in an ideal world. That ideal world, though, has passed. The Steve McNair world where you sit for a year, the Carson Palmer world where you sit, the super luxury of Green Bay where Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre and where Love sat behind Rodgers, which was not, by design to last as long as it did. This is a nice idea in principle. It's also a very impractical idea in the league as it's set up now, where you got to make a decision on a guy's second contract, and some guys are being paid for second contracts before teams know what they have. Now, some of those contracts are well crafted, but you're also paying a guy a lot of money too soon. Not necessarily in years, but too soon before you know what he is, and it's not healthy. Will Levis is about to start his 15th game, so he's 2 games away from starting a old NFL regular season's worth of games. Right? Are we a final verdict on the guy in many people's eyes? Yes. Is there still a possibility of him emerging as something better than this? Also, yes, though it seems less and less likely, right? And I've said time and time again, I think maybe he emerges as a quality NFL quarterback in a couple of years after he's been beaten up here and goes somewhere and sits and learns behind another coach and then gets a second chance. But that sitting and learning doesn't come at this stage. It comes at a later stage. Look at Anthony Richardson, and you could say he really needed to sit. Well, he really needed to sit because he played, 8 games in college. Could have sat behind Minshew last year, could have sat behind Flacco this year. That's great. Then that eats 2 years of his contract. And only then do you get a guy who played so little in college start to get him more experience. The way to solve inexperience is to get experience. And so, look, it's a situation by situation thing. You can watch some, but you can't watch forever. It's just unrealistic. And this is from Brian Callahan this week talking about this subject. You don't know anything about anybody or any quarterback until he plays football, until you're in the heat of it and it matters. He dismissed even preseason. That's Garrett Nussmeier now at LSU. The first half of that game this weekend, he played in a big game. First half of the game, all the draft guys are tweeting, Garrett Nussmeier, my number 1 quarterback. I like this guy. He's number 1 on my list. Second half, the guy threw 3 picks. It was an absolute mess and a loss, and a big loss. I don't know if all those guys did a big retreat or if their number 1 quarterback is a guy who throws 3 interceptions in the second half and is going to come into the league if he comes out this year a lot like Anthony Richardson. Guy's played 8 games. He's got some games left this year. I don't want that guy. You think he's the answer to the Titans' problems? No. I think Mike Herndon, I heard secondhand, Mike Herndon was talking to somebody else. Forgive me if I'm talking out of school. Likes him. Next year, stay and play and turn your 10 or 11 or 12 games this year into another 12 games next year. Get yourself 24. Come out with 24 games of experience, then maybe you're somewhere. Bill Parcells had, a board for what he needed a quarterback to have coming out of college. 3-year starter, graduating senior, graduated from college, started at least 30 games, 23 wins, 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and at least a completion percentage of 60%. Now, he might wiggle some of these numbers given the context of what college football now allows a guy to do, but I don't know that he'd wiggle it much. There are probably fewer guys that meet these criteria now, so it makes them harder to find. But as a general guideline, I think that's pretty good. It's not Anthony Richardson. It's not Nussmeier. It's not close to it if it comes out this year. I'd be shocked. Talk about this like you would bet against every guy coming out. And the less close he comes to meeting these criteria, the more you would bet against him. And then, fans are saying, well, sit him. Well, you sit a guy. If you have a Minshew, who's an up and down guy, he's going to give you some good starts and some bad. A Flacco, who's, a unique guy who turns 40 in January, isn't going to be able to do this forever behind an Andy Dalton. It's not just the fan base that gets impatient. Coaches could be patient, but what about your locker room? See the kid running the scout team, doing some nice things. Think you've got a roster that's maybe equipped to do some winning, and the team spent a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, top 15 pick on this player. Who's your hope? And he's over there in the locker, coming in from doing scout team. It's just the way it is in the league today that you want the kid to play. Everybody wants the kid to play. As soon as that bridge guy isn't winning, and look, he's not winning on any consistent basis. That's why he's a bridge guy. If he was more than a bridge guy, then he'd be your starting guy without a lot of question, and you wouldn't have the young guy. So I just think the nature of the thing is you've got to play him. Here's Brian Callahan, excuse me, on kind of measuring production for the whole team against the development of a young quarterback at the same time, and how it's kind of complicated. There's Leon. Look at Leon. Leon. Those ribs, dude. Those ribs. I always turn the wrong way because it's like a mirror. That guy, he pours a mean margarita, which I have not had during my lunchtime thing, with those ribs. Is he coming over here? Come here. So you saw me react to those ribs, and you knew exactly how I was going to react. And everybody that gets the ribs the first time reacts
same way.
How scared was I of the sauce?
You were scared, but you did.
It wasn't hot, but I didn't need the sauce. It's so good without the sauce.
Did you like it though?
Oh my God.
Get it again?
Oh God, tomorrow.
That job's done.
That's Leon. Here's Brian Callahan on production versus being patient with the developing young quarterback.
We're in a production business, and that's at some point you reach that apex where we do have to win or show that we're improving. All those things are all a part of it, and you really want to make sure that the rest of the team feels the same way too. You reach a certain point where if they don't feel like that gives them the best chance to win, that's always the hardest part, because you got a bunch of guys that put their bodies on the line every week too, or it means something to them, and they don't take they want them held to the same standards. If your position is not playing well, usually what happens? Find somebody else. And so sometimes that you get to a certain point where that also happens, where guys are fighting and trying and fighting through injuries and playing hard, and they just sometimes want to make sure that the rest of it's in line with that too. And so that's where it gets tricky if you're not playing well and you're trying to develop and still win. So again, these are like really deep philosophical conversations for a Wednesday, but those are all the things that go into it.
It's tricky. Another thing that's tricky, and Nick Holtz, the offensive coordinator, gives us some nugget every week in his press conference that's information that we did not have. And so he was asked today about the process of Levis coming back from the shoulder now as compared to when he came back from the shoulder before the Indianapolis game. And he said, we're doing a better job this time with everybody being on the same page in terms of the quarterback and the coaches and the medical people, all making sure we have all of the information that we need and want to be able to make the decision for his return. Clearly indicating that they did not do a good enough job bringing him back for the Indianapolis game in terms of knowing all of those things, and that maybe in hindsight, they do not think that they should have brought him back for that Indianapolis game, when in the fourth quarter he said that he couldn't get enough juice on a ball that wound up being an interception. So that's an interesting thing. Now, they bring him back this week. Indications are they're going to bring him back this week. He needs to be ready to go. They don't want to bring him back, then have him, the shoulder gets worn out. Then they go through another practice week where he ends up not participating fully in practice for a couple days, and they've got to go back to Rudolph, and then they're on a back and forth quarterback situation. They need steady quarterback play. They need Levis to be playing consistent. Primary complaint I'm going to sneak in here. Happy Halloween. It's Halloween. That's the extent of the Halloween tribute on something like the Paul Kuharsky podcast, on the radio show that Paul Kuharsky is part of. I got TVs here. You see some in the background. There's some up here in front of me. NFL Live's a good show. I do not need Dan Orlovsky's 5 favorite Halloween candies. 5 favorite candies. Like, when will these shows stop playing to the lowest common denominator and giving you the same shit every year on the same holiday? It's Arbor Day. What's your favorite treat? It's Thanksgiving. What's your favorite side dish? It's Halloween. What's your favorite candy? Who wants this? It's nonsense. It's boring. It's predictable, and it's the same every year. Like, do we all forget? Are we brainwashed from one Halloween to the next to get into this favorite candy conversation? Are we this dull? It's boring as shit. Do everything you can to not endorse this so they will stop doing it. Dad to the bone, chiming in on the Arbor Day theme, that he is a big maple tree guy. And if Joe and Robbie were talking about the same thing yesterday, I will scold them very strongly next. No, I have not talked about special teams yet. Don't worry, it's coming. First, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley last week said that he reverted back to my work. Now, this is great that he reverted back to his work and got results and had a big game, had a 10-catch, 140-something yard game, which is the kind of game they gave him this big contract to have. It's a little concerning that he reverted back to his work, which means he got away from his work. So what had he been doing for the first 6 games of the season? Where was that work during those first 6 games? That's a fair question. He said that Callahan gave him talking to in terms of, you've got to play better. And last week, despite the fact that he had an injury, foot, I believe, that kept him from practicing fully, he was out doing extra work. He was out early in the week, catching balls from a jugs machine. Callahan saw him out of his office window, and he took a video of it. And he put it up in the team meeting. Not to throw a parade for Calvin, but he said, here's a guy who's got a bad foot this week, but he's finding a way to do something extra. What is the thing that you could be doing extra? I want every guy to consider what his extra thing is. Find a way to go do it this week. Now, I think that's good coaching. That's good messaging. Didn't result in a win, anything like that. Everything's very incremental right now. And then for them to see that Calvin's extra work produced Calvin's best game, produced a star-like game for a guy being paid like a star, very effective thing. Does it result in an upset win in Detroit? No, it does not. But significant moment there, I think, and impressive. He's got to sustain it now. There's a big question, too. That was with Rudolph. Now Levis is going to come back. Can that translate from Levis? Everybody's saying it's not a big deal to change a quarterback. Holtz said today that the routes that were run, the balls that were thrown, the effort that was put forth should translate right to Levis. Levis saw all that happens and knows what to do. Needs to translate. Needs to happen. Spencer says he bets I didn't like tight end day. I do not like tight end day. To create a day to celebrate your position. But seeing how everybody soaks it up, I don't understand why running backs aren't creating running back day and left tackles aren't creating left tackle day. Every position should be jumping on this. The best guy at every position in the league should be picking a Sunday, declaring it that position's day, and having a field day with it. Because ESPN's soaking it up, NFL Network's soaking it up, all of these it's just dying for any kind of content because they're not thinking it up very well on their own. So good point there, Spencer. Good point. I mentioned JT Runke, who is doing a fine job producing. It's been a godsend for me, and I'm very grateful for his fine work behind the scenes. So much so, and he saved my ass one day when my power went out. He jumped on the air and saved the show. Does fine work. He's got a pod of his own with Stoney Keeley on Fridays. Great guy. I try to get him to come on the air, show off his fancy shirt, make picks with me. Very, very screen shy on the Paul Kuharsky podcast. Either he thinks the product's excellent and he doesn't want to spoil it, I don't know. Or he thinks the product's inferior and he doesn't want to appear on an inferior product. He only wants to appear on his own show. I don't know. We don't have deep conversations like this. Maybe today in the locker room we could dive into that. Today, I could share. He's wearing a very weird, awkward Halloween costume. I'm not against Halloween costumes for adults. It's okay once in a while. But, he's kind of a Lord of the Rings, Hobbit kind of guy. And, I don't know who these trolls and hobbits are. And so he's embarrassed to come on the air with that. But he did share a pick. And so we're going to talk about Zen Sports, no danger first wager. If you lose your first bet, you get refunded up to $1,000. Go to Zen Sports, download the app. This is a Tennessee thing. Use the code TNPAUL, TNPAUL. Sign up with that. You make a bet of at least $10. You get a free year of paulkuharsky.com. I don't know where there would be hesitation for this if you're not a member. But you could bet up to $1,000 with that first bet. Get the free year of membership. You hit the bet. You bankrolled your account. You lose the bet, 24 hours later, the money's back in your account. This is the very definition of a win-win situation. And not just, great stuff here, but at the Paul Kuharsky podcast, we provide you with these winning bets. And so I'm going to tell you, Houston should be favored by more than 2.5 points against the Jets. And when a spread is weirdly off like that, what you do is you go with the weirdly off thing. So the Jets are going to win this game, getting 2.5. They're due. They've been due for a long time. They're a bad football team. But the Jets getting 2.5 is not enough. When it's not enough, what happens is that team wins. Oh, look at JT and the whole press corps. Are they giving middle fingers? Go ahead, turn on the audio there. Look at that shirt. See how he's dressed as a hobbit? Let's hear some audio.
I don't know how this tells me I dress like a hobbit. I mean,
look, he's got on that
fine shirt. I don't know. Nick Suss, the Tennessean. What do you think? You think it's a fine shirt?
Yeah, sure.
He's got on a fake beard. It's
fake
like
beard.
a hobbit.
Yeah, I tried really great today too. Yeah, I think Teresa thinks it's real. So
now JT's getting back at me for my comedic stuff by bringing the entire press room.
I did
Teresa
not
Walker is
over
definitely
here.
not welcome in the podcast.
Well,
definitely not welcome.
Yeah.
I know right now she's destroying the press room with constant conversation. But thank you for popping in, JT. Here comes JT's pick. That was a great introduction, JT, into your pick. He's loosening up after weeks of non-participation in the pick. He likes the Packers getting 3.5 to keep it close at home against Detroit. And I co-signed this pick. So that's a double stamp of approval. Packers plus 3.5 to keep it close, home versus Detroit. I'm with them. I think that's a good pick. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and over to bet in Tennessee. These are the picks for your no danger first wager bonus at Zen Sports, where you use TN Paul to sign up. I'm big on the Jets getting 2.5 against Houston because I don't think it's enough. And JT and I both say take the Packers plus 3.5. JT, we thank you for your appearance. I actually love the shirt and that you blew up my bit where I had you wearing a costume that you are, in fact, not wearing. Edleys Barbecue and Zen Sports, great sponsors of this. And I'm sorting through my barbecue-stained notes. I wrote about tanking this week. Tanking is one of my least favorite topics in the world. The Titans are not tanking. You have to prove first that you could win on purpose before you lose on purpose. That's one thing. Titans have not proven that. Callahan is not going to coach to lose. The guy needs to show that he's a competent NFL coach. I talked to a couple players about it. Peter Skoronski. It's not my job to worry about offseason moves or draft capital or whatever the hell that stuff is. If there's a game, we're going to try to win it, and that's the end of the story. I don't ever think about a draft. Not now, no. I don't give a shit about that, to be honest with you. This is what you will hear from every guy in the locker room. Those of you who are obsessed with the tanking stuff have to get off it. There's no organizational plan to lose on purpose. Now, they may well end up at the top of this draft because they're not good. And being not good has the results of getting you a very high pick. Also, there's no prize at the top of this draft that is going to cure things for them. It's not a Trevor Lawrence draft, and you see how that went. It's not a Joe Burrow draft. It's not a draft with a huge guy at the beginning. Maybe next year for Arch Manning, but that's that. Go to paulkuharsky.com, read that story. Go to paulkuharsky.com, read Mike Herndon on 4 things that need to happen the rest of the way for the Titans, which is continuing to play Levis and give him every chance to show something, get a fuller assessment, accumulate assets. Trade deadline is next week. Titans obviously haven't done anything this week, a week after trading DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones. Maybe more to come next week. We can hope. Play more young guys like James Williams, guys like Jalen Harrell, and evaluate Brian Callahan, whose team has been too sloppy, has not executed well. There are signs from him. They're smaller signs. We need bigger signs. Shall we get in? Let's take a couple questions, then we'll get into the special teams, where Brendan Taylor's thanking me for getting after Colt Anderson today. And Nate Martin says, I think most fans have divorced the concept of intention from tanking. They just want to see the team continue sinking to the bottom and actively root for it. I just don't get it. I don't get actively rooting for the team to lose. Wouldn't you like to sit down, and I hit this theme a lot, to sit down on a Sunday afternoon and enjoy a football game? You wait all season for 17 football games. Why would you not like to enjoy a few of them? It's bewildering to me. Do I think the future of NFL quarterback is like Green Bay does, with a young quarterback sitting, or like Atlanta is maybe trying to do, having paid a guy and draft one to sit and learn instead of thrown in the fire? Well, I mean, Green Bay did it by accident. They weren't expecting Jordan Love to sit that long. Atlanta, here's the choice Atlanta's making. And maybe it works for them with Penix sitting behind Cousins. But what they did is they took away an opportunity to give Cousins a very good player to help Cousins win now. So it's very difficult to combine short-term vision and long-term vision the way they're doing. You split the baby. When you split the baby, you hurt both the short-term and, maybe you help the long-term. But what's it saying to Kirk Cousins and today's team that you're worrying about 3 years from now, when they could have used a pass rusher or what else? I'm not that familiar with the Falcons roster, but there are certainly holes in it. And they could have fixed those holes with that pick. And by not doing so, maybe they look like geniuses down the road. But so first off, you have to be a team with a capable, older quarterback to draft your quarterback of the future. How many teams are in that situation? You're saying, is that the model? Well, it can only be the model for teams that have a capable, older quarterback. How many teams qualify as that? Not most teams. Dig up. I'm starting to get concerned with the trend of players playing good somewhere else and then coming here and playing badly, or playing badly here and then playing well somewhere else. I corrected some of your grammar there, Dig up. Yeah, it's happened far more and more frequently. Khalif Raymond, certainly the chief example there. There wasn't a lot of clamoring for Khalif Raymond to stay. I'm sure I clamored for them to go get somebody better than Khalif Raymond. Now, they failed to get somebody better than Khalif Raymond, And to me, that's the problem, right? To me, letting Jack Conklin go wasn't a problem. Jack Conklin had bad knee. And his bad knee's been an issue, and his injuries have been an issue for Cleveland, though he had another all-pro season up there. The problem was that they did a shit job of replacing Jack Conklin. And when you draft Isaiah Wilson to replace Jack Conklin, you've got no chance. When you draft a guy who plays 4 snaps in the NFL to replace a guy who's been an all-pro for you, you're in big, big trouble. And that just doesn't cut it. SR says Hardigree is a good quarterback coach, proven success as a quarterback assistant coach and regular coach with young quarterbacks. Indictment on Levis. I bet you've got a UT attachment. I don't think his resume is anything particularly special. And I think I'm not looking at the quarterback coach as much in a Titans offense when Callahan is your head coach. Callahan is the primary quarterback coach for the Tennessee Titans. And Levis's success or failure is primarily on Levis and secondarily on the coach they hired to because he worked with Matthew Stafford and Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow, and that's not Bo Hardigree. This is going back to Parcells' list. Maybe I'm wrong, says Nate Martin, but graduating seniors coming into the draft at quarterback don't seem to exist anymore. As I said, I think there are less guys that fit these criteria, but I believe Will Levis came into the league with a graduate degree. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. JT, you can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong there. But apparently Ramon Foster, according to JR, says that the game against the Patriots is Levis's last chance for evaluation. Why would the 8th game of the season randomly be his last chance at evaluation? People are overthinking it. They have 17 games this season, and they don't have a good alternative at quarterback. His last chance for evaluation is going to be their last game of the season. They're not going to make a final decision on anything or anybody, really. I mean, there may be some peripheral guys, but they have a full season here, and they don't have an alternative. Nobody's coming to save them. They've said that several times. So, maybe, in the back of their head, they know, hey, this isn't going to be it for us. They might know that already, or they might know it soon. But Will Levis is going to be playing games in December and January. They don't have any other choice. So if he does something fantastic in a game in December or January, or strings together 3, there are things he can do that can alter perception. I don't know if that could totally flip their opinion of him or whatever. But it doesn't make any sense to me to say the last game he's going to be evaluated is this game. So let's get rid of that. I'm going to go retweet. I urge you guys to retweet here. We'll get a little bit more of a crowd going. And then we're going to get into special teams here, which I know people are excited about. Because special teams has just been a disaster. So here's where I'll start. Let's listen first to Brian Callahan on punt coverage. One of the things the Titans said this week, Callahan said, after they had a blocked punt in the first 2 games of the season, they changed up personnel a little bit to make sure they didn't get blocked again. And to make sure they didn't get blocked again, they gave up some speed. And they gave up some speed in coverage. Well, you give up some speed in coverage, you need more hang time. They haven't gotten more hang time. Asked Stonehouse about it this week. He said, well, I can convert distance into height, but that comes with, kind of a systemic change. And, we're going about that now. It made it sound like they hadn't gone about it previously. The whole thing sounds out of sync. Let's hear from Callahan first.
Well, there's things that they have to work together. Just like your rush and your coverage on defense work together to create sacks and cover teams down the field and pressure the quarterback. The punt coverage is the same way, is that you have to be able to protect and cover. And then there's things about that process that have to work together. So the hang time has to work with coverage. The direction of the punt has to work with coverage. The speed of the players and the technique of the players have to be executed well. and then you have to make returners when you have chances to take a shot. You have to make the tackle, and then there's the other part where your gunner's got to make a returner go sideways and not right down the middle of the field. And so all that stuff works together. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily like we lack. We have enough to go be a good punt coverage unit, and we have to do a better job of the fundamentals, the techniques, and then working together with the protection, the coverage, and the punt timing all have to work together to have better results than we had last week, certainly. So again, we'll everybody is going to have a hand in it, and we're going to have contributions from a lot of guys, and that's always how special teams works. And you're never going to have 4 or 5 core Pro Bowl special teamers. I mean, we got to have guys step up and do those jobs at a level that allows us to execute the way that we need to win.
Team needs a jolt, right? I wrote from the press box at Ford Field, this team needs a jolt, and the ouster of Colt Anderson as special teams coach would be a jolt. They chose not to do that. Callahan has defended him. Here's the thing I don't get about a coach that performs as poorly as Colt Anderson has as a coach, seemingly, based on the performance of his unit, not just individuals on his unit, and based on how he talks to the media. And he makes a weekly appearance as a coordinator. If you can't articulate your unit's problems, and if you're like a deer in front of the headlights talking to a group of 10 reporters who are not New York or Philadelphia or Chicago reporters, how would we have faith that you can command a room of players? I think that's a fair line to draw. You can't handle this conversation with some tough questions, but also some softball. And you've got convoluted circular logic. And I'm supposed to think that you're good in front of a room of 15 guys who are your punt coverage guys and the chief backers, or the same for your kickoff coverage. I just don't. I think there's a disconnect there. Now, look, I knew he was going to come into the room today and say that the coverage teams were unacceptable. And he came into the room after Chicago game and the Jets game when punts had been blocked and said that was unacceptable. So he was going to call the work of his units unacceptable for the third time in 7 games. And I thought to myself, well, what would a coach say to a player who called his work in 3/7 of his games unacceptable? So that's the premise of the question that got this back and forth started. What would you say to a player whose work was unacceptable in 3 out of his 7 games?
I don't think it's 3 out of 7 games. This last game was kind of an anomaly. We got beat, and it's unacceptable. We got to play with our hair on fire, and we will.
But you stood there and said special teams performance three times when you after a game. You said it's unacceptable. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what kind of consequence is there for a guy if he's unacceptable?
Yeah, it hasn't been effort. Effort's never been an issue here. I think guys are passionate. I know guys are passionate about it, but just executing their assignment at an extremely high level and, just hammering the details and getting guys ready to roll.
Well, you just said effort was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
B, the question wasn't about. So if you could take both of them. First off, you said effort was a problem.
This game, yeah.
But separate of the effort, if a guy is putting forth an unacceptable performance in 3 out of 7 games, what happens?
You're looking for a guy to come in and make things right. That's what our job is to do is put the best 11 on the field. It's a performance-based business, so you got to go out there and perform.
So, if a guy doesn't perform 3 out of 7 times, you're looking for a guy who could make things right. Well, Colt Anderson hasn't performed 3 out of 7 times, so where's it? They should be looking for a guy to come in to make things right. He said it himself there, right? Am I wrong? Now, he convoluted things there because he's setting this game apart because this game, he said the effort wasn't good. Now, how in the hell do you have special teams taking the field with insufficient effort? I mean, that's a super indictment. So that got convoluted because he got caught up in distinguishing this poor special teams performance from the other poor special teams performances, because this one fell in the effort basket and other ones didn't fall in the effort basket. So he wants to, subdivide. I don't care about the subdivision. He said there, 3 out of 7 poor performances, you look for an alternative to the guy. Well, he said 3 of the 7 special teams performances were unsatisfactory. That's him. So they should be looking for another guy, by his logic. Not by my logic, by his logic. I don't know what the hell they're doing. If they have a bad special teams game against the Patriots, where do they go from there? And the Patriots just had a 64 or 67-yard punt return against the Jets that set up a touchdown. You think they're not going to pick this unit apart in every single way possible? It's an utter disaster. And Titans special teams have been an embarrassment for a long time. He talks about them not fumbling. He said something else today. I can't remember exactly what it was, about meeting some very low basic standard. Shifting here, Kane Martin says, if we take the best receiver on the board, if we have a top 5 pick, I'm not sure any of these quarterbacks are worth it with that high of a pick. I tend to agree with you. And if Travis Hunter's available, well, let's go to the first of our voicemail calls here. Sean, on the idea of forcing a quarterback. We'll pick up on this idea.
Username Sean Ferguson. Sorry, I got cut off on the first one there. My question would be, do the Titans have to draft a quarterback in the draft? I know it's down a little bit this year compared to last. Everybody's all over on who their 1, who their 2, and their 3 is. I just don't want to see them reach with a roster barren and holes everywhere and have a Patrick Peterson, J.J. Watt type draft where we reach for Jake Locker and then there's studs throughout the first 10 to 12 picks. So that's my question. Will ownership force a quarterback to put butts in the seats, or do they go a veteran route to compete with Levis next year and try to fill more needs? Thanks.
I nearly just lost my ribs because they're showing World Series highlights here, and that 5th inning is worse than any horror movie. Look, ownership's not going to force a quarterback. I don't think ownership's forcing personnel. I really don't. And a bad quarterback isn't going to put butts in seats. A star player is going to put butts in seats. They need a star player. You're drafting top 5. You have to land a star player. Who's the star player at the top of this draft? I'm not a draftnik, and I'm certainly not looking at the draft yet. But Travis Hunter is a star player. And amongst the Titans' needs, edge rusher, right tackle, can't go near right tackle in the first round of this draft, wide receiver. And Travis Hunter is a young, dynamic, playmaking wide receiver who also you might occasionally put in your defensive backfield. I don't know what you do there. He's got to primarily be a wide receiver, but he's played effectively as a two-way player at Colorado. There'll be a lot of intrigue about that. It's a star, right? He's going to bring, I think he brings butts to the seats. Great wide receivers make plays no matter who their quarterback is. Look at DeAndre Hopkins and the list of quarterbacks he's played for and the number of catches he's made, yards per game, and all of that. So you've got to get a blue chip player, a potential superstar. There are games to be played and there's research to be done. But you could be in a quarterback bridge situation for sure here. And it does not have to be a quarterback. You cannot force a quarterback. Let's take our other voicemail call here, which is Carl on bad teams.
Hello, Paul. Carl Davis here. Love your work. I would like to ask you, there are 10 teams with 2 or fewer wins in the NFL at this point in time. Of these 10 teams, who do you think has the best chance to make a significant improvement in a year or two? Thank you.
10 teams with 2 wins or less is pretty remarkable. And the percentage of them that are in the AFC, which we all judge to be a much better conference than the NFC, pretty amazing. Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, Browns, Jaguars, Raiders, Titans with 1 win, Giants, Saints, Panthers with 1 win. 10 teams, 2 wins or 1 win. The clear answer to who the best team of this bunch is and who has the best chance to dig out of it the quickest is the Browns, because they're out from under Deshaun Watson, not contractually, but playing-wise. Tore his Achilles tendon. Now, I'm not a Jameis Winston guy at all. But all you have to do is put a functional quarterback into this team, and it can be a pretty good team. It's a playoff team last year with Joe Flacco. It's the most talented roster on this list. You saw what happened the first game. You got Deshaun Watson out of the lineup, and you put Jameis Winston in, and they beat the Ravens. And the Ravens are one of the better teams in football. So I don't know what the Browns do next year. Deshaun Watson's not going to be ready coming off a torn Achilles. He tore it in October. It's a year injury. If he's back in October, it's not going to be himself. The hope is, from Cleveland fans, that he's played his last game for the Browns. If they have to eat the money, they have to eat the money. It's a huge salary cap hit. It's been a disaster. Unquestionably, it's been a disaster. Who's the second best team on that? Dolphins. I mean, Tua's the best quarterback for any of those teams. He's not great. The concussions scare the hell out of me. You know, it's not for me to decide when a guy retires, but I would have thought long and hard about retirement. He sure as hell be wearing a Guardian cap. He's smarter than everybody. The rest of it's a mismatch. I mean, I think the Saints have some good players. I don't understand the commitment to Dennis Allen, and they obviously have some quarterback questions. They were awfully good the first 2 games of the season with Carr in place, and then injuries started to happen, and we saw another team without depth at quarterback. You know, who do the Jets hire as their next head coach? Who do the Jaguars hire as their next head coach? Who do the Giants hire as their next head coach? Who do the Saints hire as their next head coach? How good of a draft class do the Titans have? Do they find a quarterback? Those are some bad football teams. Really bad football teams. You need to subscribe to paulkuharsky.com. Become a member. $7.50 a month. Really nothing to it. The best news analysis. I told you last night. I mean, I give you big news. I give you small news. Andrew Rupsich, tore his tricep. He's out for the year. Expected to be out for the year with a torn tricep, which means they're going to promote not the new guard that they signed, but they're going to promote Corey Levin, and he'll be available as a backup center. But really, Daniel Brunskill now is the swing interior guy. So you find that out from me. I've got a piece up about tanking where I talked to Tyler Boyd, which nobody else has thought of, because he had a career year in the year that the Bengals, quote unquote, tanked to get Joe Burrow. I talked to him about what it was like to hear all that tanking talk while he was doing the best he ever did. I think he had 90 catches that year. Mike Herndon with the weekly column, typically with a lot of film. Blake Bedingfield with the scouting review of the game, where he looks very carefully at key ingredients from what just unfolded, and then a scouting preview on Friday where he tells you what to look out for in the upcoming matchup. So lots and lots of good content. You can get your voicemails if you're a member on these broadcasts. Nobody else can. You get access to a members-only Facebook page. You can get in line for the All-22. And those guys have a huge meeting with a big name that most of you would love to meet. Scheduled for November 18th. You'll see some pictures from that, I imagine, after that event happens. So I can't encourage you enough to join, become part of the membership. A lot of friendships have been built from that. A lot of tickets get passed around on the website. We'll take some more questions. Eat at Edleys, bet at ZENSPORTS. Ed, a great member, says, should we give Callahan a pass as he preaches patience now after the offseason swing and miss? Would feel better if the patient's comment would come after the admission that the original plan didn't work. Well, what's the original plan? Levis? I mean, I don't think anybody's saying that Levis is working. He's pretty much acknowledged, he's been places where the first year hasn't worked, and it's taken into the second year for things to get going. I think he's been quite candid about how things are going, his disappointment over that patience isn't high in the league. I'm not expecting coaching change after this season. We haven't talked about Rand Carthon's comments, which I covered earlier in the week on Robbie and Rex Road. It was a disaster. I think the guy needs to talk more. And again, I'll say kind of what I said about Colt Anderson. Like, we're told over and over, Rand's a relationship person. But I think to build relationships, you have to be a conversationalist. And I don't understand how you could be that bad of a conversationalist with the media and be a supremely gifted conversationalist in building relationships. There's a disconnect there for me. I don't see how you could be so bad at one and so good at the other. And so it makes me doubt how good he is at the other. I'm curious what you guys have to say and your reaction to what Rand said to Nick Suss. Looking more at your questions here. We'll go more to these. I appreciate you all coming. Good crowd as usual. CA says, I'm not giving free passes if you don't hold special teams accountable and graduate from 30th in third down and correct the inability to ever convert 3rd and 2 or 1, which is a weekly struggle. Well, I don't know that anybody's looking for free passes. I mean, like if you're talking to me about giving free passes or about you personally giving free passes, I mean, those things are all a struggle. They know they need to get better at them, but that doesn't mean that they're going to fire a guy over those issues in this short order. There's Blake Bedingfield's column for tomorrow morning landing in my inbox, so we've got that to look forward to. William says, I can't believe that 10 NFL teams have only 2 or 1 win. Wild. I didn't realize that either. William says, my favorite 2 Titans writers, Paul and Jim. One had to lose. Sorry, Paul, the Yankees didn't win, but Jim's Dodgers did. Maybe next year. No, not next year. Yankees are going to think that they're fine and close because they made the World Series and lost. And they'll think like Rand Carthon. They'll think it was like bad bounce luck that got them when they're a fundamentally unsound team defensively and base running wise. They need to really, really rethink the way they operate and get fundamentally better. That's not going to happen with their lax approach and their willingness to have guys be lax. That's incredibly disappointing. They should have won that game yesterday, obviously. They gave them 6 outs in an inning and at least forced it back to Los Angeles. The Dodgers, superior team in virtually every way. And congratulations to them. I texted Jim right away last night. But I'm so disgusted with their underachievement and with their satisfaction with the way they do things. It's ridiculous. Well, Nicholas asks, what's the 3 of 7 performances were bad nonsense? All 7 performances were garbage. And that shows up in the statistics for the entire season, but 3 of 7 were especially bad. 3 of 7 featured blocked punts and a massive return yardage. So I agree, 7 of 7, they lose special teams on a weekly basis. But 3 of 7, he's outright called unacceptable. So that's where we're playing from that. But he did, basically, once he circled around that logic, the Colt Anderson clip from earlier we're talking about, Jason Lewis said, he basically said he should be fired. And, yeah, he did basically say he should be fired. So I'm now going back in some of the comments. Is there a homecoming game this season, Nate's asking? I don't know. Some insults for Ramon Foster. I'm acknowledging those. I wouldn't spend a lot of time listening to that show personally. I spend zero time listening to it. What else we have here? We'll finish out with a couple. Fear No One says F Callahan, F Levis, F Anderson, F this year. It's disgusting, like my language. Wow, it's a very sophisticated comment. We try to keep it sophisticated here, and so and I'm not afraid of cursing at all. I like cursing. I like it. Feels cathartic. Clearly felt cathartic for you, but I think I use it in the context of some more sophisticated conversation. So we'll spare people that. So the question about Landry, I didn't see a question about Landry, but Juan says, feel the trade coming. I mean, I think if Landry would get moved, somebody would have wanted him sooner than later. So I don't understand. I do think they're probably shopping him. Maybe the returns they've been offered haven't been satisfactory, but I would have thought that it would have happened this week, and I clearly got an indication Tuesday that nothing was brewing. I don't think anything's going down, deep into a practice week, and they're obviously finishing up the first practice of the week right now. So it wouldn't make much sense. A team wouldn't have him in its plan at this stage of the week. So then you look for conversations to pick up Monday and Tuesday, and the trade deadline is next Tuesday, I believe. If the team was kicking ass, Rand would probably be out there more. Yeah, front runner Rand. Simple Circuit said that Rand interview was hard to consume. I would agree with that. I just don't understand why he can't say obvious things. Hey, we spent a lot of money on that free agent class, and we really like those guys, but we expect more from most of them than we're getting, and it's beyond time for them to step it up. I mean, how hard is it to know to say that? If you don't know to say that, then I don't know what you can be trusted to do. CA is a big fan of Elijah Molden. Rand gave up Molden for a 7th. This week we're going to start Julius Wood at safety. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. We drafted Molden in the 3rd, and he has more interceptions than our entire team this season. Malik is 3-0. Well, I still don't believe that Malik is of value here, and I think he's never going to be a starting quarterback. And I understood them giving up on Molden based on what they had. They basically preferred Condre Diggs. Molden, I think, is probably in the last year of his contract. I didn't see him in the future. So they started stockpiling picks. This team has turned a lot of 3rd-round picks into 7th-round picks. This team just turned, 1st-round picks into nothing. So that's not a surprise. Juan saying all of Rand's drafts are bullseye so far. Yeah. Will Levis, absolute home run. Logan asks if I think Callahan should give Holtz play calling duties. I don't see what that would solve at all. I think they're having little trouble with timeouts here and there, but the sideline disorganization is not a giant issue for this team that Callahan needs to give up play calling in order to manage things better. And Holtz would be calling Callahan's plays. So he's not some different thinker. It's amazing, the split on Holtz. Half the fan base thinks Holtz should be calling plays, and the other half thinks he should be fired because he does nothing. Very interesting. Will Jacoby Brissett be the 2nd-best quarterback the Titans will have faced this year? It's a very interesting question. Need to look back. They certainly made Willis look great, so have to put him in the equation. Who would win in a boxing match? JT or Easton?
So where's the key?
JT, you're welcome to jump back in on that one. Easton's got the size, but I would think JT would move better.
I think I could beat Easton in a boxing match for sure.
The hell are we talking about?
I don't know.
I like that.
Now Easton's coming over, so
No,
he's got
Easton.
something to say.
Easton, it better be good. It better be good. Why are we boxing? He wants because somebody asked who would win.
Someone
in a
asked who would
boxing.
win in a boxing match. I think I'd beat you.
I'd embarrass JT if you paid me.
Oh,
Now he wants some money.
all right.
No, just for the sport of it.
For the sport of it, I'm beating him. Easy.
You do it for free.
I do it for free.
He'd do it for free for the sport of it. I would go with my guy JT because he produces very well. I think that's a good place to end. You've got to eat at Edleys Barbecue. You've got to bet at ZENSPORTS. You've got to be a member of paulkuharsky.com. I will see you at the site. Mailbag, which has priority for members, will post tomorrow, as well as Blake Bettingfield's preview of the of the Patriots game. I'm getting ahead of myself. And I don't know if I just said the mailbag has priority questions from people who posted on the private Facebook page. So if you're a member and you want to run over there, I can still add to it. It is in process. Thank you for coming. Don't block the box. Be sure to lock the locks. Thanks to JT Runke, my favorite boxer amongst him and his good friend Easton. Take care. Be well.